Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 505. I am so excited for today's guest. We're going to have a really great show, I can tell. We've got Dr. John Douillard here with us. And in our pre-talk, before I hit record, I was like, okay, we're all set. You got your water? And he's like, yeah, I got my analemma water. And I'm like, what? We're both drinking structured water right now. This is so cool. So John, tell me, so you just started drinking about a month ago, and then now you're drinking like all your water, structured water. That's what I do. I stir all my water. I've been doing it since just after Thanksgiving. So it's been 7-8 months that I've been drinking the analemma structured water. And I do notice more get up and go. And my plants look crazy. My plants look like I fertilize them with crack. I don't know. It really does make a difference. But you can't just do it a little bit. Like you said, you started out drinking a little bit, and then you started drinking like more and more of your water with structured water, and then you noticed more energy. It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is interesting. And I think when I really said, okay, I'm going to make sure I drink this water. And also it makes me drink more water because I really want to get the effect of it. So I started stirring it into, we have actually my staff have one too. So they're stirring it into the big kind of a glass zero filter thing that they just stir all the water for the day in that. And they're using it too. I really started, when I started drinking a little bit more of it, just like, three like 16-ounce glasses a day, I started feeling more energy, more lighter. And even, I always have good energy, but I feel like the energy was so much clearer. Like I was clear-headed, and I was less just weirdly distracted by the world we live in, social media, this and that. I was way more focused on, my quiet time, my spiritual time, and I'm more motivated. And I always have that motivation, but sometimes I can get, distracted and, other things pull me off. But I just felt like it changed my vibration in my brain or something. It was so I'm still a rookie at this, but I am giving it a good go, and I'm excited about it.
That is so cool. Now I don't know if you know this, but they came out recently with a whole house unit. And my listeners get 10% off, coupon code LTH. As always, listeners can go to learntruehealth.com/structured water to check it out. Plus, also check out all the studies that Analemma puts out. They're putting out a study around bathing in the water, and they found that it changed cardiac output for the better. Now, I'm not a cardiologist, but I read through the study. I'm like, this sounds great. I have no idea what it means, but it was very sciencey. I'm sure, John, you would understand it if you read the study. I know that you told me that you read studies every day, the latest studies that come out, and I love it when doctors do that they are plugged into the latest science. So I'm excited to see the studies as they come out in terms of bathing in the structured water, because I believe in frequency medicine. And so it just makes so much sense to surround the entire body with structured water and see how that's going to help us. And already that they take already healthy people and do these do these studies to see what average healthy people, how they would benefit instead of taking sick people. So they want to make sure that they're not crossing any lines and saying that it's a medical device, although I'm sure one day we might be able to start to see studies about that. But already healthy people have improvements in skin health and heart health, and it's very interesting. So yeah, I love drinking it. I wonder how many things you and I have in common. This will be fun.
Yeah, and I love the fact that when you actually stir it into the water, it's permanent. Like a lot of structured water, they're very temporary, and this one you create that structured water and it stays forever, which is kind of really, I think, the unique, other than the quality of their structure, but that's kind of really neat, where you can kind of do a whole batch and then have it last, and it's always there for you.
That's what I do. I fill up all my mason jars and I sit down and I'll stir them like 2 minutes each, or I'll fill up our really big containers of water and I'll just sit there for like 10 minutes and just stir, and I'll be doing something else talking to the family or whatever, listening to something or watching something, and it's meditative for me. I love it. I feel a sense of productivity. I'm like, okay, my water's stirred for the day. But I got to be honest, I can't wait for the day that I have the whole house unit. I think I'll miss stirring it, but at the same time, it'd be wonderful to bathe in it as well. Really, really interesting. I'm really excited to get into what we're going to talk about today because you have such a depth and breadth of knowledge when it comes to taking ancient wisdom and modern science and showing us the way, showing us the light, right? There's so much diet confusion, there's so much even herbal confusion, medication confusion, and we're all bumping around, sick of being sick and sick of being feeling like we're kind of lied to by the mainstream medical system that, claims that they've got a pill for us. Whatever your problem is, they've got a pill for us. And that's just suppressing the body, forcing the body into, trying to force it into, or suppressing a symptom, forcing it into a way of being, a state. But as we know, when there's disease, it's going to show up somewhere else, right? So we suppress something, it's like whack-a-mole, going to pop up somewhere else. And now you've got 5 more symptoms from that medication to handle. Whereas if we come in and look for the root cause, support the body's innate God-given ability to heal itself, right? Instead of trying to play God, let's step back and go, how can we support the body's ability to heal itself? Now we'll be able to watch the body come into correction. So you have a wonderful store. We're going to talk about that later, where you provide herbs and herbal blends that all will support us as tools. Listeners can go to learntrail.com/lifespa and use coupon code LTH to be able to access the products that we're going to talk about today as you teach us about using food as our medicine and using herbs as our medicine. I'd love to hear what happened. How did you figure out, how did you get into, like, how did you get super excited about Ayurveda and using these ancient wisdoms along with modern science to guide people?
Well, back in 1986, when I was in chiropractic college, I heard the word Ayurveda, and I was studying acupuncture at the time. And for some reason, I just loved that word, and I wanted to know what it was. And it's the kind of traditional system of medicine from India that's thousands and thousands of years old. And I was just so intrigued by that. So I ended up having a chance to go to India for a 4-week, 6-week trip to learn Ayurveda. And I went there and I found an Ayurvedic teacher there, and I was invited to stay there and train with this Ayurvedic physician. And so I had a practice in Boulder, Colorado at that time, and I called my partner up and I said, hey, I don't know when I'm coming home, but I'm not coming home for a while. I literally closed my practice by a phone. He could barely hear me. This is 1980s. There was no cell phone. It took an hour to get a line to call from the United States to India. And so I just closed my practice, and a year and a half later, I came back, and somebody I didn't even know was driving my car. I had things in different houses everywhere scattered. And when I was there, I met Deepak Chopra, and he was opening up a center in Massachusetts, and he wanted someone who had been trained in Ayurveda to do it. So at the end of my training, I also, more importantly, I met my wife in India, and even though she was from California, and along that way, that year and a half, we got married, and now she's pregnant. We're living in India with my pregnant wife, who couldn't handle the smells in India at all, So she needed to get out of there, and Deepak said, well, this is perfect timing. I'm opening up this center. Why don't you come back and run the center for me? So we did, and literally the day I got there was like November day. We walked into his new clinic, and there was a doctor's conference that I was supposed to teach. I literally got off the plane and had started teaching, and so I started teaching medical doctors Ayurvedic medicine. And I realized really quickly that this wasn't going to work, a chiropractor teaching medical doctors Ayurveda, unless I had some science to back this up. So that sort of launched me into kind of finding not only the ancient wisdom, which I'm so fascinated by, but the science to back it up. And that's what I do to this day. I write articles and do videos on ancient wisdom and modern science. And if I can find some ancient practice that's that's been time tested and still in practice today, and I have science to back it up, I feel like that's what we should at least look at, right? I mean, science alone can prove coffee's good, coffee's bad, soy's good, soy's bad. Whatever it wants to prove, it can sort of prove it. So without having some time-tested wisdom behind it, I feel like you don't really know for sure. So that's what I do.
I love it. Some old school doctors will say, well, this medication's been on the market for 50 years, so I would rather go with this medication that we have like, centuries to look at it and see that we know very clearly what the side effects are and what the effects are. And I'd rather give you this medication than the new one that's been on the market for 1 month and we really don't know what it does. And then we have Ayurveda, which is like, thousands of years old. And it's funny to think about a medication. Oh, it's a 50-year-old medication. Wow, that's really old. Well, how about a system of medicine that's thousands of years old and been proven and time and time again, tried and tested. It makes so much sense. Now, it's Ayurveda was cultivated in a specific area of the world. Can it be rubber stamped to any culture, to any people? Because we have very different climates. We have very different access to foods. Can someone in Chile and someone in the Yukon and someone in the Netherlands all feel the benefits of Ayurveda? Or do they have to adapt it to their climate, to the seasons, to the herbs that are accessible to them?
Well, that's the beauty of it, really, and that's such a great question. And my teacher literally drove it into my head again and again. He used to tell me, he goes, Ayurveda is not Indian. Get it into your head. It's universal. It's a universal study of nature. So it's a study. Ayur means life, Veda means truth. So it's the truth or the science of life. So it's about living in sync with the natural cycles of nature. It's going kind of downstream with the rhythms of nature, as opposed to feeling exhausted at the end of every day. You're feeling like you have to work your butt off and then you kind of have to recover on the weekends or have to have that glass of wine to come home. Life has become a struggle for a lot of us, but traditionally, if you listen to nature and watch nature, watch the birds, the deer, the animals, they're not struggling. We're struggling. And it's about living our life in that natural way. For example, and the beautiful thing is just the food we eat, for example. In the winter, we all know pretty much, in North America, let's say North America, it's cold and dry. And nature has an antidote to that coldness and dryness, and it's the harvest, which is nuts and seeds. The squirrels know that. That's what they eat. They eat nuts and seeds in the winter to give them a higher fat, higher protein food to insulate them for those winter months, right? It makes perfect sense. In the spring, when it's rainy and muddy and allergy season, the harvest is completely different. It's a very austere leafy green harvest, maybe with some berries and some bitter roots like all the dandelions on your yard that the deer are digging up. Those bitter roots will scrub and clean up all that mucus that builds up in your intestinal tract during the very wet, rainy, congested, mucusy spring months. And in the summer, when it's very hot, nature gives us cooling fruits and vegetables. So that's the study of nature. That's what Ayurveda is based on, and that applies everywhere, anywhere, anytime.
I love it. And when it comes to the herbs, there's herbs that can only be found in the regions of Asia and in India. But are these herbs applicable to every race, to every, do we see that, people of Caucasian descent have a different reaction than people of Asian descent, or universally do everyone, no matter our genetics, respond well to the same herbs?
Well, the cool thing about Ayurveda is it gives you ways to classify the herbs according to their taste and their quality, which can apply to anyone from any race, anywhere. But what's really important about it is that, having herbs, in the old days you say eat stuff that's local, and I understand that that's really important. And we use a lot of Western herbs and classify them Ayurvedically, which makes good sense. But there was a study actually that was done about 10 years ago in Utah and in New Mexico, and they went into a museum that had Indians that were 1,000 years old, and they took their poop and they measured it. They were able to figure out a way to measure what kind of bugs they had in their poop. And they found that there was just massive numbers of bugs with lots of diversity. They compared that ancient 1,000-year-old poop to modern poop, and there was such a lack of diversity in our guts that they called it an extinction event. The lack of microbial diversity. In the last 30 years, the food that we eat has reduced in diversity, different kinds of food, by 50%. So in other words, we're eating the same industrial food again and again and again, and we're losing that diversity. So going to Europe and traveling to Asia is a way, in a way, to get more microbial diversity. And I've actually done studies on that with my patients to back that up. So that's a really important piece of the puzzle. So in the old days, I would say, yeah, I want to eat local stuff and eat the food, which makes sense, right? You want to get the right bugs for the right season, for the right place, in your gut at the right time. The problem is we spray pesticides on so many things that we're eating foods that just don't, and the soil just doesn't have those bugs. So when we get herbs, we get them from India, organic farms. They're certified organic. We have to get them tested by the FDA to find out exactly what bugs are in there. And as long as the bugs are good, and they're usually loaded with good probiotics, and you actually ingest those foods, you're actually getting, inoculating your gut with the right bugs for the particular condition you're trying to treat. But also, I always like to prescribe herbs based on the season they were harvested. Like there's an herb called ashwagandha. Everybody's probably heard of that herb now. It's harvested in the fall for the winter. It's a warm, heavy, sweet root that builds, resiliency, endurance. It's an anti-aging agent. It's just an amazing herb, an adaptogen for stress and things like that. When you take the whole herb with the bugs on it, you have a synergy. There's what are called bacterial endophytes, which are bugs that are on the plants naturally. And those bugs on those plants support the intelligence and the potency and the benefit of that plant. It's like if I took all the bugs out of you, you would be a completely different person. If I take all the bugs out of our food and we sterilize them with pesticides, that's not going well for us. All these kind of sterilized foods, processed foods. And the same thing when you take an herb versus an extract. If you take an herb and you take the whole plant and then you create an extract, you've created a sterile compound. It's completely sterile. So when you take what we do in America, is I want to make that herb more potent. I want to take that herb and concentrate it by 100 times and make it bigger and better, sort of the American way. But the studies show when you take curcumin, for example, out of turmeric, which is one of the 300 constituents out of the whole turmeric root, and you make it into an extract, you made it into a drug, and it is going to be a drug. It's been shown to help people reverse colon cancer and breast cancer and prostate cancer. It's a really powerful drug. But whenever you make a concentrate like that, you're going to have consequences, side effects, just like the TV commercials for the drug companies, right? So when you take the whole plant with the herb and the naturally occurring microbiome that's on that plant, you have a food that works in synergy with your body, supports the body to do the job for itself versus do the job for the body. And that's what I really love about Ayurveda. That's what we use in our stores, whole herbs. When we test them for identity, we test them for bugs, we test them for heavy metals, we test them for everything. We test them twice, when we get the herb and after we make our formula. And then we know that these are just really potent herbs. So I take these herbs personally and give them to my patients for years and years because they're inoculating their gut with the bugs that we desperately need. We need a diverse microbiome, and we just don't have that anymore. So that's the difference between, Ayurveda, which is like, hey, let's use the whole plant, let's use nature the way it came and not try to mess with it. Like, who are we to think we can make it better, right? Let's use what nature provided for us and watch it work for us and with us as opposed to overruling us.
I make moon milk, like a turbo moon milk that my husband and I drink every night, and it has over 10 herbs in it, including ashwagandha, which I just love ashwagandha, and a ton of turmeric. But I'm thinking to myself, I've been thinking lately, like, maybe I want to try making this with fresh turmeric, like with the turmeric root. I've been using, the powdered turmeric. And of course, that is more of a concentrated, right? It's been dehydrated and ground up as a
No,
powder.
no, 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 not really. That will be if you get the fresh ground turmeric. That's completely fine. It's when you take just one constituent out of it and concentrate that one thing that becomes an extract and it's going to be sterile. But what you have, just ground up turmeric powder, that's perfect. That's great. But one study, there's a pretty amazing study that shows if you mix that 16 parts turmeric to 1 part black pepper, this was done at St. John's Hospital in Bangalore in the year 2000. It increases the absorption of your turmeric by 2,000%. So all you got to do is add 16 to 1, a little bit of black pepper to your turmeric, put that in your mix there, in your moon milk, and make that turmeric so much more active.
Love it. Yeah, I definitely, that is one of the spices that is in it,
Good.
is the black
Good.
pepper. And I've learned not to put too much. There was one time I made it and I put way too much. I'm like, I do have that American, if some is good, more is better. And I often overdo it. And that was like, there can be too much black pepper. So I have dialed it in for that. I'm actually going to be posting this soon on my on the website as a blog. I want to share my recipe because I've been playing with it for a while and I've got it dialed in. I'm really happy about it. And it tastes so good. And it's such a beautiful ritual at the end of the night. It's like I say to myself, because I like to try to eat dinner earlier and then go to bed hungry, like go to bed, on an empty stomach. And so I like to have that moon tea right when, right around maybe 8 p.m. when the body goes, gee, I wish I could have a second dinner, right? And I'm like, no, I'm going to drink this and it's delicious and it's calming and it's a beautiful ritual to just smell it and sip on it and feel the nervous system calm down and get ready for bed. And I love when I introduced it to my life, I noticed, and so I already get good sleep, but I noticed even better sleep, deeper dreams. Like I have these wild dreams, and every time I do something that I know helps me for my sleep and deepens it, I'll get even wilder dreams, even, more colorful dreams. And I'll wake up remembering all my dreams. And I'm like, I just know that whatever I just did, that was good. I can keep doing that because it's deepening the sleep and the restoration. But I notice that I'm even calmer. Not that I'm prone to anxiety, but I just notice that I'm calmer, happier, don't yell as much, don't like I'm just the nervous system feels like it is much more stable. Just introducing, like you said, ashwagandha and the other herbs into my little ritualistic evening drink. You were saying bugs, and I know I have to clarify because lately there's been a big push for us to eat insects. When
Oh
you were
no.
saying bugs, you did mean healthy gut bacteria, a diverse microbiome of the gut bacteria, and not crickets and roaches and other things that they're. There's been people saying, "Oh, let's eat mealworms instead of beef or something." So yeah, you just
Yeah,
wanted to
no.
clarify for the listeners that are going, "I don't want to eat crickets."
Yeah, no, 100%. It's all about these microbes. In fact, in the Ayurvedic textbooks were 2,500, 3,500 years old, they talked about invisible bacteria. They called them krimi. And they talked about how they could cause problems and they could be actually beneficial. They talked about this and they couldn't even see them. I don't even understand how they knew this. And they also said that the ones that actually cause problems, you don't want to kill them. You want to change the host, change the environment, as opposed to killing them. Something we're just beginning to understand now. When you kill bugs with antibiotics, you're killing so many good ones, and that's part of the reason why we have such lack of diversity, which we now know is an extinction event, right? So it's so neat that that's what I love about the ancient wisdom and the modern science is like, wow, they knew that this microbiome existed thousands and thousands of years ago. And they also had some really amazing insight of how to manage all these microbes that can do good or do bad, And I love your drink. I want to see your recipe. And, you should know that in Ayurveda, it's always said that you need energy to go to sleep at night. And a lot of people
Yes.
say, oh, I'm too, exhausted, or I'm too tired. I'm wired and tired. I can't get to sleep. The reality is you need energy to go to sleep at night. And ashwagandha is one of those adaptogens. It's literally named after putting folks to sleep. The botanical name is Withania somnifera, which means put you to sleep. But that herb that gives you the energy so you can sedate yourself into sleep, but it also allows you to run a marathon or take your SATs in the morning. And that's the sign of a really good adaptogen, something you can take at night before you go to bed and also in the morning for energy. Because you don't want to stimulate your body to make energy you don't have, where you're going to, over time, go into debt. You have to pay it back at some point. And that's the beauty of their understanding. We're like, okay, a little bit of caffeine here and there is fine, but let's not get dependent on things that are going to possibly down the road deplete you, right?
So it builds you up. I saw a study about how we need more ATP. We actually have healthy people who have healthy sleep and healthy energy levels. They have a surge of ATP, which is cellular energy made by the mitochondria, right before sleep. And I thought that was wild. Of course, more ATP doesn't make you jacked up like you just drank a Monster Energy drink. You're not all jittery. It's just more access to cellular energy. And when I thought about it, it made complete sense. What do we do when we sleep? Our body detoxifies. And so the cells require more cellular energy to go through the process of detoxifying, which means we should also have more antioxidants readily available. Well, what is melatonin? We're now seeing that melatonin is a powerful antioxidant, in some cases, even more powerful than glutathione. And we need healthy levels while we're sleeping to help the cells detoxify. So that makes complete sense. We need to give the body what it needs to go deep, deep, deep and detoxify and restore itself at night, and then come up and have lots of energy during the day. So the more energy we have during the day, the deeper we can go at night. But if you're kind of tired, like just crawling through the day, you're going to be tired wired at night, because we need that beautiful like rhythm up and down, right? And the nutrients. We need
You're
the
so right.
nutrients.
I love the fact that you know about that study. Very few people know about that study, and that is exactly right. Before you go to bed, just like you said, there's a surge of ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. Right before you go to bed, when the body uses that energy to get you to go to sleep, the adenosine breaks off, and you're left with 3 phosphates that get excreted as waste, and you're left with adenosine. Caffeine is a blocker of your adenosine receptor. So when you drink caffeine, the adenosine is trying to sedate you. It's a sedative. So if you have a bunch of ATP before you go to bed, then you're going to get the adenosine breaks off from the phosphates, and you have this adenosine which actually sedates you into deep sleep. But you also get that surge of energy that you were talking about. Just like when you drink coffee, the adenosine receptors are blocked, so it will literally not let you get rest if you need it. So it does, in a way, overrule your intelligence. Not that it's bad, but it needs to be done, intelligently. But that is such a great understanding of, everybody wants to sedate someone, and most of the time people are so exhausted that they can't have the energy they need to put them to sleep. So they take a sedative to make an already sedated person more sedated and more exhausted, as opposed to deeply rejuvenating them, giving them the ability to make the ATP so they can have that energy they need to go to sleep. But that's the science behind it. The adenosine breaks off, and that's what puts us and gets us to drop into that deep sleep.
So we got to step back and go, okay, how do I support my mitochondrial health? What kind of nutrients does my body need? What do I got to do to make sure I protect my mitochondria? Because mitochondria are related to the gut bugs in that it's I mean, it's really, really, really interesting. But anything that harms bacteria in the body can also harm mitochondria. So we want to support it. I just want to kind of like protect, like hold the mitochondria like it's a baby, a newborn baby, and just protect it and give it what it needs and not what it doesn't need. So what do you recommend? Of course, everything is in balance, right? We don't look reductionistically and say, let's just look at the mitochondria. We're looking at the body as a whole and lifestyle. But what are the things that are really bad for the mitochondria, and what are things that are really good for the mitochondria?
Well, the best thing for mitochondria is what actually makes mitochondrial energy, which is infrared light, which is basically the light in the morning. As long as the shadow that the sun makes in the morning is longer than you are tall, right? So the shadow is longer than you are tall. You're getting pretty much unopposed red and infrared light, not any UV radiation that could actually potentially do some damage in excess. And the infrared light actually penetrates your skin inches, even through your skull, and activates an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase, which is an enzyme that actually activates the mitochondrial energy in your body. So they said we didn't do photosynthesis in biology class, but now we know the infrared light actually does activate energy from the sun. And here is the crazy thing. You mentioned melatonin. Well, and I'm a big fan of melatonin, but only 10% of the melatonin in your body is actually made for helping you go to sleep. 90% of the melatonin is made by the infrared light from the sun.
Whoa.
So whenever your body makes energy, just like any energy plant, there's going to be a lot of waste products. And those are called reactive oxygen species. And the inability to make that energy or get rid of that trash is what causes accelerated aging and mitochondrial damage. So the body had to figure out a way to use an antioxidant, to make an antioxidant inside the cell to take out all that trash. Otherwise, it would accelerate the aging process. And the antioxidant that the body chose to make from the infrared light of the sun through that same cytochrome C oxidase enzyme is melatonin. So the body makes 90% of the melatonin. It stays inside your cell. It doesn't have anything to do with you going to sleep at night, but it's inside your cell to shove out all the free radical damage that comes as a result of energy production. So the sun is going to give you massive amounts of energy in the morning, particularly infrared light in the morning. And the more of that morning sun you get, the more mitochondrial energy, ATP, you're going to get throughout the day, and the more melatonin you will produce at night. So that's one way that you can really help yourself, particularly now that it's summertime and you can get outside and get that morning light. It's so critically important. You know, in 90% of the time, the average American is indoors, which means we have, and all the new lights, the LED lights they don't have any infrared light. You know, the old incandescents would burn you if you touched them. And that's infrared light. It's hot, heating. And so a lot of us are having now an infrared light deficiency, which is really an important piece of the puzzle because it's so powerful to protect us from DNA damage and the mitochondrial damage and accelerated aging, things that don't have to happen if we actually recognize that the sun is a really important thing. In fact, you know, we also have this paranoia about UV radiation, but did you know in 1901, UVA radiation, the stuff that the sunscreens blocked primarily, won the Nobel Prize for healing skin disease and autoimmune conditions and all types of conditions. It literally won the Nobel Prize. And that's why those old-time pictures of hospitals, they wheeled people out on the balconies and they'd be out there in their hospital bed in the sun. Remember those pictures? Mm-hmm. That's because of UV radiation, the thing that we're so afraid of. So we have to be aware that the sun is not our enemy. Now, obviously, and the infrared light in the morning will prepare you for the UV radiation in the afternoon. And again, as the sun sets, the infrared light in the sun at the sunset is going to heal any potential damage that might have been caused by excess, UV radiation during the day. So the sun really had a plan, and we were supposed to be in it a lot of the time, but we just take our little, dip in and out of it, and we become, really super sensitive to the UV radiation. And I think it's something we have to realize that we really have to be outside and in nature, under the trees, in the forest, you get all that radiation bouncing off the leaves, and it's a really safe way to get all the health benefits of nature therapy and all that. And that's primarily because you're getting literally blasted with infrared light. It's really fun to go on Google or whatever and search up infrared light in a city. And the photography of infrared light in a city looks exactly like a city normally would. Bricks look like bricks. But if you take an infrared picture of a forest, it's an explosion of white light, like you went to heaven. And you're just like, oh my gosh. It's just an amazing difference. And what's happening in the forest is all the infrared light is just blasting around underneath the leaves and bouncing off of you and everywhere. 70% of all the solar rays are infrared, so we really need to have them. And if we lock ourselves in the house all day, we're not going to get them. So that's a big piece of the mitochondrial puzzle, big time.
I just looked it up. I just looked up city, and then I looked up forest, and you're right. It looks really different, and the forest is so beautiful. Um, I'm in Seattle. I just north of Seattle, and just this morning I was surprised that it wasn't sunny because usually in the summertime it's sunny. But no, we have really thick overcast right now. So on days that it's thick overcast, or for the times when it's the winter, I am so thankful I have my sunlight and sauna. It's near, mid, and far infrared. Is that a good second to the actual sun? And should I be getting it into it first thing in the morning instead of in the evening because of the infrared helping the body more in the morning?
I think it is a good thing to do first thing in the morning, although because we have such a deficiency, I think doing it any time will actually help us. But doing it first thing in the morning sort of helps to align our biological clocks. So normally we're out with the sun. Most traditional cultures were up with the sunrise. They watched the sunrise. They got this blast, and that said, hey, sun just came up. The infrared light just clobbered me on every level. And this is literally the time where my nighttime biological clocks turn off and my daytime biological clocks turn on. So it's like synchronizing our watches to be, this is the time when I shifted gears. And it's kind of a nice way to help us make that happen. But like I said, doing an infrared sauna, I'm a big fan of those. Definitely if it's in near infrared and red and near infrared light combination, that's the combination you're looking for. Far infrared is a little bit more heating, a little bit more therapeutic, but you have to limit how much of that you get.
Oh, yes. And I, of course, have overdone that as well and figured out I'm like about 20 to 30 minutes maximum. Too much water and too little water can kill us. And so it's like the sun. Too little sun, too much sun also can be harmful. There's a sweet spot, the Goldilocks effect. None of us are getting it. Most of us aren't getting enough water and minerals, let alone enough sun and enough earthing. Getting your bare feet out in the ground, making sure, obviously, the grass you're putting your bare feet in is not pesticide laden. That's a problem, though. So you got to make sure it's a yard or a lawn or a forest that you trust. But touching the earth is so important. I have several interviews on earthing or grounding, releasing the excess electrons back into the earth and getting to earth potential. And that's something that's backed by science as well, that we're so insulated. Think about our lives. Think about how artificial our lives are. We are so disconnected from nature. We're so disconnected to where our food's coming from. And so many hands have touched it by the time we get it. It's been so adulterated by the time we get it. Even the frozen organic, I get, sometimes I get like frozen organic vegetables because that's better than nothing at all. And so if you're super busy but you want to eat vegetables and you want to eat healthy, I'd rather you have some frozen organic than I don't know, go for completely processed crap. But even that has been washed in chlorine, high concentrations of chlorine, and we just don't even know, right? So all the food, we're so disconnected from our food sources, from nature, from the earth, from the sun, from the sky, from clean air, clean water. We're so artificial, we're so insulated that we end up collecting these excess electrons in our bodies because we're always away from the earth. We're wearing rubber shoes, we're driving a car with rubber tires, and if we finally just took off our shoes, walked in the grass barefoot in the sunlight in the morning as a routine while sipping some wonderful herbal tea to hydrate ourselves and get the good nutrients in us, that would be an amazing multi-purpose ritual to bring in each morning, to instead of dragging ourselves out of bed and like running to the coffee machine, to fake our body into thinking, trick our body into thinking it's not tired. Like you said, how it blocks the adenosine. Did I say that right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. I love that you're bringing these ideas to us. You have really interesting thoughts around diet. Can we talk a bit about your book, Eat Wheat?
Yes, of course.
I'm gluten free, by the way. So when I saw that you wrote a book called Eat Wheat, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. It's fine. I don't believe in diet dogma, so I'm not gonna sit here and go, everyone has to eat the way I eat, right? But I took it at face value when I was like, okay, so he's just gonna tell us we need to eat a lot of wheat, and I'm like, oh no, here we go. But actually, I love when you and I talked a bit about this. I got so excited because it's such a wonderful concept. So yes, please tell us about your book, Eat Wheat.
Yeah, it's not really about wheat. It's about the fact that we have, because here we talked about pesticides, and pesticides on our foods literally have been studied to kill the bugs in our mouth that make the digestive enzymes that help us digest things like wheat and dairy and nuts and seeds and lectins and phytic acids and goitrogens and oxalates, all these things that were nightshades. We're being told, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat. And we're literally bubble wrapping our diet. And we talked about an extinction event being linked to microbial diversity. Well, this is how we get it, is by eating a variety of foods. Those foods we've been eating for millions and millions and millions of years, right? Now, I'm not saying we should eat processed wheat. I'm not saying we should eat a food if we feel bad eating it, obviously. But if you eat a food and you feel bad eating it, then we should not say, hey, I'm going to stop eating that food. Like you put gas in your car, the car stalls. You don't think it was the gas. You think, something's wrong with my car. So that's what we should be thinking about, is what can we do to strengthen our ability to digest our food the way we were designed. And so the reason why I wrote Eat Wheat was because the whole gluten-free industry was sort of based around the fact that folks weren't feeling good eating wheat. Now, a lot of it was the processed version of it, but a lot of it wasn't. A lot of it is the fact that folks just aren't digesting the way we should. And then they eat a hard to digest food and then they pay a price for it. So they obviously, logically think it's the food, so I should stop eating that food. Studies have shown now that when folks are gluten-free, and I'm not trying to promote eating wheat, I'm trying to promote strengthening digestion, fix the upstream cause. Wheat is a canary in the coal mine. If you eat that wheat and you can't digest it, then you need to ask yourself the question, why am I not digesting that well? And how can I reboot that digestive strength? How can I troubleshoot every aspect of my digestion and figure out where my digestive system is broken down? And a lot of people say, well, the wheat here is processed and it's sprayed with glyphosate. It is, but everything is sprayed with glyphosate because it's in the rainwater now. You know what I mean? So you have to be able to digest well to detoxify well. If you don't have good digestive strength, you're not going to detoxify. And the EPA in 2019 and 20 reported 70 million tons of toxic chemicals dumped in our atmosphere every year, which filters down onto the water we drink and the air we breathe. So if you eat organic food, you're still getting those chemicals on your food that don't really wash off. So if you don't digest your wheat, your dairy, your nuts, your seeds well, sure, don't eat them. But don't stop there, because that means your ability to break down the toxins in the environment, which can cause real problems for you, they're also going into your intestinal tract undigested, and they're finding their way into your tissues, into your brain, and they're going to wreak havoc down the road. So that's why I didn't like the idea that we were being told to bubble wrap our diet and not really fixing the upstream cause. And studies have shown that when folks compare people who eat wheat to people who don't eat wheat, gluten-free versus non-gluten-free folks, and these are not celiac patients, they found that the folks who ate wheat had significantly 6 times less mercury in their blood than the people who were gluten-free. They had significantly more good bugs, less bad bugs than the gluten-free folks, and they had significantly more killer T cells than the folks that were eating wheat. Now, what that means is that these harder to digest foods have a hormetic effect. They have a hormesis effect, that thing that says if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, like the cold bath plunges and all that. It doesn't kill you, but it makes you stronger. Well, the harder to digest foods that we've been eating for millions of years, the nightshades and the goitrogens and all these foods that we are being told to avoid, the phytic acids and the lectins and things, they're naturally occurring. And if you take them out of your diet, you're going to slowly lose your digestive strength. They did a study, I thought amazing study, with kids with asthma. And they found that the Amish kids who have pets, as you know, they have cows as pets and they run barefoot in the barns and stuff, they have the lowest rates of asthma on the planet. And they did another study with their genetic cousins, the Hutterites, who come from the same valley in Switzerland, but they became modern farmers, sterile farmers. And their kids have the highest rates of asthma on the planet. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's not a genetic thing. It's just something's going on with these kids. Well, they measured the Amish kids and they found out it was the dust in the barn that they were breathing that would cause allergies for some kids, but it was actually creating a hormetic effect or hormesis effect that caused an immune reaction against them getting asthma. So we have to not bubble wrap our body. We have to challenge it. That's what wine is. Wine is a xenohormetic, which means xenohormesis means with plants that struggled in their life, growing in really dry, harsh environments, deliver the benefits, the antioxidant, longevity, resiliency benefits to humans. It's called xenohormesis. And that is what our foods also did. The lectins, which are on every bean and every nut and pretty much every vegetable, which is why eating a vegetarian diet is a little bit harder for folks, actually. Eating grains is hard for folks, right? And if you don't have really good digestive strength and you become a vegetarian and you never fix the digestive problem, that's why a lot of vegetarians don't do well in the long run. A lot of them sort of crash and burn and they go, golly, and they start having real severe issues, and they go back and they start eating meat and they feel good again because meat doesn't have anti-nutrients on it. Now, I'm not suggesting people eat meat, but I am suggesting that we fix the digestive system and make sure that you don't leave that stone unturned. And that's why I wrote Eat Wheat. It's more of a troubleshooting guide for your digestive system to find out what part of your digestion is broken so you're not in harm's way down the road. Eat if you want, but boy, be careful. But if you start seeing yourself taking one food out of your diet, the next food out of your diet, when I was in practice, and I started graduating in 1984, I started seeing patients in nutrition. I was a natural chiropractic practitioner, a lot of nutritional support. And my patients would get, they would come with digestive problems. We take them off of wheat and they get better. Put them on probiotics, they get better. But shortly thereafter, the problem would come back. And I realized that taking them off of wheat or dairy or whatever, it wasn't actually solving the underlying problem. There was an underlying weak link in their digestive system. And I started digging into the underlying causes of what's causing weak. So we say, don't eat this and don't eat that. That's the cause of the problem. That's not the cause of the problem. Humans have been eating a variety of foods for millions and millions of years. Now, the pesticides, that's the cause. And we have to get rid of the processed foods and the pesticide-rich foods. There's no question about that. But you can get really good wheat, you can get really good grains, and that is a signpost of whether your digestive system is really strong. So that's why I really wrote the book, because I felt so many people being duped. And we now know, right, that if when people are not able to eat wheat, they are letting other undigested or harder to digest proteins and harder to digest fats, which are in our environment that you literally cannot avoid. The studies show they will go undigested or incompletely digested through your stomach into your small intestine. And because they're incompletely digested, the pesticides, the environmental pollutants, and the hard to digest proteins are going to irritate the lining of your gut. And the irritation of the lining of the gut is going to cause inflammation in your gut and compromise and end up getting uptaken into your body's lymphatic system, causing lymphatic congestion, which is linked to extra weight around your belly, tiredness, fatigue, stiffness, achiness, brain fog, skin rashes, breast tenderness when you menstruate. These are all drain clogging events that come from undigested proteins and fats that should have been broken down upstream in your digestion and end up in your lymph, which is the trash can, also carrying your immune system. And when that system gets stuck in traffic, you're going to pay a price. And that price is a symptom of an underlying digestive issue. And your gut immunity, which is 70% of your immune response, 70% of your immune response is in your intestinal tract, and it's bidirectionally linked to your respiratory immunity. And I wonder, and I've seen some emerging studies coming out about this, but when you have a broken down digestive system where you can't eat X, Y, or Z, and you sort of bubble wrap your diet and not fix the real problem, now we have a pandemic that requires your skin of your respiratory tract and the skin of your intestinal tract to be as strong and resilient as it possibly can. And we don't have that. we were going to be a vulnerable host for any opportunistic bacteria or viruses that are come our way. And there's going to be another crazy virus that's going to come. And we need to be strong as a host and not depend on a vaccine or a pill or a powder or whatever, because there's a lot of controversy there. But you getting your digestion strong, getting your body strong, that's the source of our immune strength. And that sort of is what I'm all about when it comes to wheat. It's not about saying, hey, wheat is really good, you should eat it, even though it's processed and it's got a bunch of glyphosate on it. I get that. Yeah, I know people when they go to Europe, they feel better. I get that. Mm-hmm. The thing that we're doing is we're not looking at the elephant in the room, which is the digestive weak link.
You know, I'm smiling ear to ear. You're saying exactly what I feel inside. It's like, thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's like what everyone's thinking. Everyone in the holistic space is like, it's not about waiting for Papa government and Mama pharmaceutical company to come take care of us. Just, you know, on Facebook, a lot of people will have this ring around their avatar that says, I have an immune system. And I know that was a little bit of a show of where we stood, and a lot of people took it as a political stance. It's not. It's saying, listen, I'm not going to buy into the propaganda. I'm sorry, I'm not brainwashed like so many people are brainwashed, but they were fear mongering so heavily. And I know many of my listeners did get the experimental gene therapy injected into them because they you know, their parents did it, their doctor that they had their whole life maybe said, this is so good, you should definitely do it. Their job said they had to do it. Everyone around them, their neighbors, said they had to do it. And I have watched in such sadness as so many people's lives were destroyed by that. And of course, you know, we don't talk about that, or you're a conspiracy theorist if you talk about that, but really be careful what you put in your body. And like I said about the drug that's 50 years old, okay, well, we can trust that a bit more because we've seen it work on people for 50 years and we know what it does and what it doesn't do. Something that just came to market and they're suppressing the effects of it. Why were their parents giving their 6-year-old children this is beyond me, but that's how intense the fear mongering was. And I'm so sad and sorry for the teenagers, the amount of teenagers and all the people that died suddenly and unexpectedly. And all the young people now that have heart disease that didn't before. And of course, getting the virus itself wasn't fun either. And like you said, we have to look at why was it that some people that were healthy walked around like my husband. When he had it, he was at the height of his infection. He had like 100-degree fever and he was mowing the lawn for 4 hours. We lived on 5 acres and he had a push mower. At one point we had a driving one, but there's something about walking and mowing the lawn for 5 hours every 2 weeks was fun for him. I was great exercise, and I watched him from bed as I was sick. And he can eat wheat once in a while, and it doesn't affect him like when I eat it, you know. And I've had heavy metal toxicity so bad. I would wake up tasting heavy metals, and my liver was inflamed, and that's why I've done the sunlight and sauna to help get rid of my heavy metals and the PES, and taken the chlorella and all the herbs, and I've detoxed heavy metals for the last 4 or 5 years, and I feel like a whole new person, and been working on my gut health for the last few years. But with the height of my infection, I was in bed feeling miserable. I watched my husband mow the lawn for 4 hours, and my husband has an amazing digestion, which it makes sense. So we have to go, what's the root cause? Let's go all the way back to the center of our body, our digestion, right? It just makes so much sense. If we don't have a strong digestive fire, we're not getting in nutrients. The body has all these like the leaky gut, the things that aren't supposed to be entering our lymph is entering our lymph. And a lot of people talk about the byproducts of the bad bacteria entering the body, and like a toxin in of itself, sort of the poop of the bad bacteria getting into our lymph and into our brain, and making us just feel miserable all day long. And there's no pharmaceutical that's going to be your knight in shining armor. If you have poor digestion, everything's broken down. I had a doctor on the show. He simplified it, and I love this analogy. If you can look at, and then there's 37.2 trillion cells in the body, and they're all very, very different under a microscope, but there's one basic truth. If you can bring the garbage, sorry, if you can bring the groceries in and take the garbage out and do it successfully, repeatedly, then you're going to have health. And I take his analogy one step further, and I say inflammation is like when we look on TV and we see that there's a flood somewhere, and people are sitting on their roof, and there's helicopters trying to save them, and there's like dirty, muddy water up to the eaves trough of the house. You guys in America call it the gutters of the house, but you can just see like the 1 or 2 story houses are just completely underwater, and all the families are on the roofs waving at the helicopters to come save them. When we see that, imagine that every cell in the body that has inflammation is like that. The groceries can't come in, the garbage can't come out, and it's not functioning. And that's that sludge, the lymphatic sludginess. And we have to go upstream and go, where's this coming from? Go all the way back to the digestion, like you said. And we have to honor that 6 pounds of healthy bacteria, hopefully healthy bacteria in our gut. It's I allude it to a chihuahua or a little panda, or some kind of animal that's small, maybe a kitten that's about 6 pounds that you like, and you just imagine you want to hold it and take care of it. This is the gut bacteria in your gut is helping you digest your food, assimilate the nutrients. It is our pharmacy inside us, because it can transform our food into other compounds and chemicals that our body needs. And so it all comes back to that. Like you said, it's so important. The bacteria that are on our food instead of sterile food, the healthy bacteria on our food. That's something I learned from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition when I took their health coach training program. There was this video where they showed a strawberry, and they said, this strawberry grown in, organic soil has this kind of bacteria on it. And when you eat this raw strawberry, this bacteria gets, if you had left it on the ground, the bacteria would have kind of digested it, right? We've seen those videos where they'll speed up the camera and you'll watch a fruit kind of dissolve into like a fuzz and then get back to the earth, right? Becoming earth again. And when we eat it, the bacteria that's on the strawberry helps us digest and assimilate the nutrients of the strawberry. And it blew my mind. It was like fireworks going off in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, it just expanded my universe, because I was raised like everyone to think that the sterility of food was what we needed, right? You have to have the milk go through the pasteurization process. You have to have pasteurized food. Sterile food is best. When you bring your food home, you wash it, soak it in the tap water that has all the chlorine, and kill all the bugs. And meanwhile, the sterile, if our body was sterile, we die. We need that. We need the gut bugs. We need that. So I love that you're talking about this, and that we gotta wake up and go, it's not about removing the food. It's not just about removing the foods you're reacting to, because eventually you'll have nothing to eat. And I have friends who are now eating the carnivore diet because they are left with nothing. They cannot eat anything except for meat, and they're suffering.
100% right. That's exactly, because the meat doesn't have anti-nutrients, so it is easier to digest for folks. And that's what we keep going down the road of, like, well, I don't feel good with this diet, I'll try this next diet. I keep going down this next diet, trying to fix my problem by changing my diet, going from one extreme diet to another. And, I've been in practice for almost 40 years now. I see the casualties of these extreme diets. And when I help people get their digestive strength back, it just makes, they can start having, foods, a variety of foods, and have, like your husband, a digestive system that is not only digesting wheat if you want it, but they have an immune response that is 100% dependent on our digestive strength and the ability to detoxify, which in this toxic world we live in, if your digestion is not strong, your ability to detoxify is going to be compromised, and that, can create a real problem. I was teaching a seminar years ago at Kripalu, the yoga center back on the East Coast, and one of my patients did a show. Well, one of my students came up and she said, I found this McDonald's hamburger in the back of underneath the seat of my car that was there for 10 years. It's a true story. And it looked exactly like a McDonald's hamburger. It hadn't done what the strawberry that you just mentioned did. It was completely recognizable. It was like everybody was just shocked. Like it didn't degrade. It was just looked like the hamburger. It was amazing. So yeah, we really do have to understand the digestive system. And in Ayurveda, the very first system that's evaluated, which I think is so cool, is the lymphatic system. It's called rasa. And the study of rasa is called rasayana. And the study of rasayana is the study of longevity. And they're a whole branch of Ayurveda about living a long, healthy life. And so understanding the lymphatic system is such an important part because it's not only trying to take the trash out, it carries your immune system, and it also delivers properly broken down fat as baseline energy to every cell of your body. So if you don't have good lymphatic flow, then you're going to start to feel compromised immunity, more vulnerable to allergies or hypersensitivity reactions. All the undigested proteins and fats are going to end up in the fat cells around your belly and hips. They're going to go into your brain lymphatic system called the glymphatic system, which dumps 3 pounds of plaque out of your head every year while you sleep at night, causing brain fog and cognitive decline, inflammation, infection, and even autoimmune system concerns, according to the science. I did a debate with Dr. David Perlmutter when my Eat Wheat book came out. That he wrote the book called Grain Brain.
Yep, I had him on the show.
Yeah. And my mother, you can watch the debate. My mother said I definitely won the debate, so I'm pretty sure I did.
Can't wait to see it.
But what was really interesting was like there's so much science on the other side of the aisle, and he actually did finally admit in our second debate that that wheat isn't really that bad. And the diet that he eats today isn't the same diet that he ate when he wrote that book, by the way. And that's what I also love about Ayurveda, is it doesn't change. They don't say, oh gosh, you know what, we made a mistake. You don't eat seasonally. You should eat, this or that. They've been using the same diet forever and ever, which is eat what comes out of the ground in season, because you had no other choice to do that. And when you do that, you change the bugs in your gut from one season to the next. Studies are now showing, good science from Stanford show that the bugs in your gut are supposed to change from one season to the next to the next. So we should inoculate our bugs with the food, or gut with the foods or the bugs or the microbes from the foods in that season. And studies are now showing that those bugs on those foods, those microbes, actually support the function of those foods. So if you want to have foods to help you decongest from allergies in the spring, you eat the foods that are in season because they have the right bugs for the right season. Same thing with dissipating heat in the summer, same thing with boosting immunity in the winter. The science is in on that. But we haven't had any. I wrote a book called, my second book I wrote was called The 3-Season Diet, about eating according to the 3 major harvests in nature. I do know that there's 4 seasons. Some people question me on that. But there are 3 harvests. There's a spring harvest, a summer harvest, and a fall harvest for winter eating. Once generally nature takes a rest, like we should. Everybody takes a rest. And those diets change dramatically from a very high carb diet, during the end of the summer. And that high carb diet's really important in nature. If you're going into winter and you haven't eaten a lot of fruit, to have that, convert into fat and reserve fuel, and all the grains that are harvested to help that excess fuel converts into fat and reserve fuel. You need that when the winter months are coming. That's part of nature. And the spring, it's a very, very austere harvest where you're going to go into ketogenesis because you're not eating anything. There's no food. Think about this spring. Look out your window in the spring and see what you could eat if you're living off the land. You would naturally go into a ketogenic diet, naturally occurring. You burn your own fat, and that's how you would be in ketogenesis, because there's no pasta, there's no pizza harvested in the spring whatsoever. In this wintertime, it's a naturally occurring high protein, high fat time of the year, because you're not growing anything. you're going to probably have to do more hunting. And that's our traditional, ancestors. They all had to have a little bit of meat. They didn't eat a lot of meat, but they had a little bit of meat, and it was mostly seasonal. Why would you kill your chickens in the summertime when you can't eat the food out of your garden fast enough? You know what I mean? So nature really did have a beautiful plan that we've gotten ourselves far, far away from. And, and now we're beginning to see that all of these diets are actually okay. But whenever you go into an extreme diet, the next best-selling diet is usually giving you permission to eat the foods that the other diet said you shouldn't eat because you're craving it. And you go on any diet extreme for a little while, you're going to feel better. But the test is, will that diet provide you a lasting benefit, where you really feel good for the long haul? And that I would recommend folks take a look at, eating foods that are in season. We put together a free. Nobody read my 3-season diet book. They thought I did. They thought I really didn't know that there were 4 seasons, so they didn't read it.
No.
I don't know what they thought, but it didn't do as well as I thought. But the point was, is that we wrote I put all the recipes into a free eating guide where people can get it for free. Every month we put out a recipe guide, a grocery list for every month of the year, superfoods for every month of the year. So you can get, okay, here's what's happening, in July, here's what's happening in August. And you can just get a list and eat more of those foods in that season. That's the key that hopefully folks will take away from this is, hey, you know what? It's summertime. I'm going to give myself permission to eat way more vegetables. It's wintertime. I'm going to give myself permission way more fiber, way more fat, and way more protein. In the spring, I'm going to intermittent fast way more aggressively. I'm going to force my body into a little bit of calorie restriction because that's the hormesis time. That's the time of the year that provides strength and resiliency and immunity because we are giving the body a sort of a major break from eating lots of heavy food that we did in the season prior, which is the winter. Sort of a beautiful, beautiful understanding when you look at nature and go, hey, we're going to try to mimic that somewhat.
Oh, I love it. So here's the idea. Let's take your book and you're going to do a relaunch, second edition or whatever, but instead call it the 3 Harvest Diet.
There you go.
And then you can do some kind of subtitle about eating, the ancient wisdom and science of eating with the seasons. Okay, so just do it. Go do that, and people are going to buy it and read it, okay?
I love that. But I hated that. But the people at Random House were like, "Oh, we're gonna call it the 3 people." I'm like, "We're gonna call it the 3-season diet." I'm going like, I don't even get that. And like they just overruled me completely. And I was like,
really?
Yeah.
Well, go back to them
crazy.
and tell them my idea and say I know what I'm talking about, and just say the Ashley James said it. So of the Learn True Health podcast. Very.
I will absolutely.
She knows what she's talking about. Put your foot down.
Which is true.
Oh, so most of the population that's listening to this live in 3 to 4 seasons. When I joke about the 3rd season because I'm in Seattle, we don't really have 3 seasons or 4 seasons here. We just have like rain and cold and mud, and then a beautiful spring, and then an amazing summer, and that's it. And so fall and winter is just like cold, mud, and raining. So I joke that we have 3 seasons, or we actually mud is a season here. But what about people in the subtropics and equatorial regions of the world where they have access to fresh fruit all year round?
They do, but there are still harvests there. There are still seasons there, and they still can eat foods that are locally grown that are naturally occurring, and there are still natural cycles there. And also the people there are different than like in the Northern Hemisphere. We go from a 72-degree house to a 72-degree car to a 72-degree office. But so we never really are experiencing the changes as much. But like if you live in the tropics or in Florida, it can be 50 to 60 degrees in the wintertime, and it can be 80 to 90 degrees in the summer. That's almost 30-degree difference. So they're actually experiencing that every single day, almost every moment of the day, because they don't have, they sort of do the air conditioning thing now, but not as much as we are so much more insulated than that. So we really lose that natural rhythm of nature of helping to strengthen and that hormesis effect of dealing with cold and being stronger for it.
You keep talking about building on the fat for the winter, and I'm like, John, okay, I've got a few winters on me. Like, I'm sure there's some listeners who are like, I don't want to, like, as much as
Right.
I want to eat with the seasons and heal my body, I'm like, can I skip the building the fat for the winter and can I just go straight to the burning the fat for the summer, for next summer? So, what do you recommend? Of course, go all the way back to healthy digestion and lymph, right? Because you talked about how that buildup creates unwanted belly fat. But for those who love as much, they want a good, healthy digestion, and they also want a really strong, healthy metabolism and equally strong detoxification to handle the toxins as they burn the fat. But what do you do for people who are really, really ready to get down to their ideal body weight? How do you help them to get that, build that fire in them?
Well, there's so many ways. I think, and obviously, there was a time when we really needed that extra fat, and this is not that time. Most of us need to help lose a few pounds and kind of get ourselves back to energy balance, where what we're putting in, we're using, and not storing excess, right? So there are lots of ways. Every spring and fall is a really great time to do a calorie restricted type cleanse. We have Ayurvedic cleanses that folks can do. We have a 4-day cleanse, which is really super easy. We have a 14-day, which is more of an overhaul digestive reset that folks can do. So there's ways that they can do that. Our 14-day cleanse, people lost usually on about 17 pounds on average. Our short home cleanse, which is an ebook, anybody can download it for free. Do the cleanse. Women's World magazine called me up one day. They said, "Can we do a cleanse?" And I said, "Sure, you can take my short home cleanse right on my website. You can get it for free." They did it. I didn't hear from them for like almost 9 months. They called me up and they said, "I want to do a fact-checking test, interview with you." I go, "For what?" And she said, "Well, we did your cleanse, and we had 40 people do it, and it was mind-boggling. People lost 11 pounds on average in these 4 days. It was amazing reset." So there's simple ways to just kind of reset your ability to burn fat, right? Which is a really important thing. I did a study with my own patients once. We had about 25 folks do this study, and I had them eat breakfast, lunch, supper, no snacks. And they were like, "Whoa, no snacks." That was hard for them. And they complained for the first 2 weeks, and then they started feeling better. At the end of the 2-month study, we measured their anxiety, depression, cognitive decline. We measured their sleep. We measured their anxiety, their exhaustion after work, and their weight loss. And all of those counts, their sleep also was significantly better. They lost 1.2 pounds every week during the entire study. And one of my patients, one of those people in the study, she would come every week we'd meet, and she'd go, "I love this. I'm feeling so good, not snacking and feeling great." And a lot of them said, "Well, I'm feeling so great with just a breakfast and lunch. I don't even want supper." So many of the folks felt like they could just skip supper and go down to 2 meals a day, which they did. And they lost even more weight, significantly more weight. And but the lady who kept saying, "I feel so good, I'll never stop eating this way," she said, "But I haven't lost a pound." And I was like, "This is a study. It would be great to have you lose a few pounds. It would be great for our numbers here." And she said every week she came in and she hadn't lost a pound, but she felt great. 6 months later, something like that, she walks into my office as a patient. And I said, "How are you doing?" And she says, "Great." She goes, "I lost 25 pounds. I said, "How? When?" She goes, "I don't know. I told you I never stopped doing that, eating a breakfast and lunch and no supper, or a lighter supper, or a soup-like supper. And I just, somehow slowly lost the weight." And she was a really like type A, go person, yoga teacher, mom, just so much on her plate, And I said, I just think it takes time for your body to feel safe enough to burn the fat. We store fat when we're under stress. And if you can and that's where understanding that, the harder you push, the more the body says, "This is crazy. I'm going to store the fat under the mattress for a rainy day." And that's what it's so important for us to, meditate, do yoga or breathing practices, some type of prayer, some type of downtime where we're not just going is a really important piece of the puzzle. Because a lot of the things that make us, that impact our physiology is our crazy mindset that makes us do the same dumb things again and again and again and again. And Ayurveda talked about this thousands of years ago. They called it mental ama, or unwanted emotions. And those are, according to Candace Pert's research, the molecules of emotion. We know that those are actually stored in our fat. And they actually are little energy kind of pre-recorded stress responses that make us do the same dumb stuff again. But when you burn fat, you free and release those old, you have access to those old underlying emotional patterns of behavior. Like during a cleanse, when you force fat metabolism, if you do self-inquiry, which we give people a self-inquiry guide in that process, they can begin to go, wow, I've seen why every time I go home for the holidays, I start acting like a 4-year-old again. And then the key is to begin to take action to free yourselves from those old patterns by not responding to their stress, but by looking through the window of compassion and understanding. And instead of reacting to them, start to respond from what's really inside your heart, which is that you love and care for them. But we'd always let them trigger us. And then we end up trying to engage in behavior to make them change, to be something that we think they should be. And if they were the way I think they should be, I would be happier, they'd be happier, the world would be a happier place. And sort of never really works. So that's also part of it as well. Ayurveda understood that this crazy mind of ours gets us into some big trouble. So we have to, pull every string, the upper digestive string. How do you reboot digestive strength? How do you detoxify the lymphatic system? How do you shed old unwanted emotions? How do you force the body into fat metabolism so you can get into energy balance? All these things apply, and they can be done gracefully throughout the year. And it's not like, it becomes kind of a beautiful way of life where you really feel like you're going downstream with the current and you don't feel like life is a big struggle any longer. And that's the key.
So Ayurveda was never just about physical health. Like it wasn't just here's the food and the herbs and when you eat it and when you take it. Ayurveda was true holistic medicine in that looking at the body and life and your being as a whole, your life as a whole, which the Learn to Health podcast, I always say that like you're not just your physical body, right? We have emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, energetic, and even every aspect of your life is your health, right? The health of your marriage, the health of your relationships, the health of your career, while you're driving, while you're walking, while you're brushing your teeth, what's going through your mind, your self-talk, like every single aspect of your life can be kind of looked at and examined and is this in harmony? Do you have joy here? Do you have blockages here? Is it toxic for you? Are you stuck? Are you growing? So we do not practice reductionistic medicine like MDs do. We don't reduce us and break us down into our parts. And so what I'm hearing from you is that Ayurveda is that true holistic medicine, in that you're looking at everything, every aspect, including, that your emotions, but also your mental strategies and maybe the unwanted strategies that were developed in childhood that aren't serving you, looking at that as well and seeing how is that now affecting everything. How does that affect digestion, right? How is that affecting detox? How is that affecting your weight loss? It's all interconnected. Nothing in the body happens in a vacuum. We have to remember that.
Yeah, no, 100% true. In Ayurveda, it's said that you feel the pain or the stress in your heart, and that stress is then carried to your brain, and it's actually etched into the white matter of your brain, which is where the waxy myelin sheaths are. Imagine like etching the stress and recording it in a certain part of your brain. Well, they now have discovered that part of the brain, and it's called the part of the brain that cleans that out. It's called the glymphatic system. Like I said, dumps 3 pounds of plaque, trash out of your head every year while you sleep. I had a patient of mine. I did Ayurvedic Panchakarma detox retreats for 26 years. So I carried people would come to our clinic and they would do a detox retreat. And I would guide them through this for many, many, many years before I started doing writing and teaching more. And one of my patients, there's a technique called nausea where you actually sniff medicated oil into your sinuses and you clean out that brain lymphatic system. It's what happens. And it's a pretty elaborate procedure, and I have a video on my website about how you can do it at home. But it was the thing that would actually help people crack that emotional egg. Sometimes patients, they just can't get over that emotional hurdle to get themselves to feel at peace and turn off the alarm bells where the body can actually heal. So she did these treatments, and I gave her her self-inquiry guide, and she was writing in her journal after she did these, because brain kind of sniffing medicated oil up into the sinuses, but after a really vigorous head massage and eucalyptus steam to vasodilate the head and the vessels in the head as much as possible. Then you sniff this sort of medicated oil to trigger a brain lymphatic sinus dump, really. And after she did it, she said she was sitting there and writing in her journal, and she said, I had this epiphany where I was abused when I was 14 years old. And she said, I really had completely blocked it out of my mind. She was probably 35 years old at that time. And I said, and it was so amazing for me to see this event. She said, but what was really, really weird is I wasn't affected by the event. I was completely taken by my childhood. Before the event, I was this happy-go-lucky kid. Then this event happened. And then I became this type A, hyper-vigilant, 90-hour-a-week corporate executive perfectionist. I even have a color-coded closet. Like everything was perfect in my life to keep me safe. And I looked at my life before, I looked at my life after, and I looked at that event, and I said, this wasn't worth 25 years of my life. And she said, I just dropped it. And she let it go. She came to me with a goiter in her neck the size of a grapefruit or a cantaloupe. You couldn't miss it. Within the week of the Ayurvedic detox, I swear to you, that goiter was gone. You could not see it. Her numbers, we measured, came down 200 points. She had hyperthyroidism. Within 6 months, her thyroid numbers completely normalized. 4 years, 5 years later, something like that, I was in Denver at a Christmas party, and she comes running up to me. I hadn't seen her in a long time, with 2 little kids in tow, and she said, I just need to introduce you to these kids that are mine, that I would never have had if this didn't happen. So the idea that the emotions are just in your head, they're, in Ayurveda, like you said, they don't compartmentalize. Those emotions are physically based in our body, and we can detoxify them out of ourselves so we can have access to them mentally, emotionally, make transformational change and free ourselves from underlying emotional patterns that aren't serving us any longer. And that's what, Ayurveda means. Ayur means life, Veda means truth. It means the truth of your life. It means, and they weren't satisfied with just being, we know 95% of the things that we think and say and do as adults come from impressions from the first 6 years of life. So most of us walk around pretty unconscious, thinking and doing stuff based on old impressions that saved us or helped us survive and navigate our childhood. But becoming conscious is what Ayurveda was all about, like freeing ourselves from those old protective patterns and letting something real, more powerful, more beautiful out, letting the delicate petals of your flower really open and let that vulnerability out, let that love out, and even your power out. But that's really the beauty of it. That's what got me, was guiding people through this process and watching them transform. Oh my gosh, yes, their digestion, yes, their back pain, yes, their heartburn, all that's great. But when you see someone light up because they're free from those old emotional traumas that were the underpinnings of their digestive health, and you really see it's all tied together. It's not just one or the other. It can be. You can fix heartburn, they feel better. That's great. But a lot of times, it's all one thing. It's just kind of morphed into different expressions.
Yes, the root problem has a bunch of branches, right? So it's the symptoms are showing up in different ways, and you take a stressor, and then the body's unsympathetic, and then they're not digesting probably, and then they're not sleeping, and then because they're not sleeping, they're taking coffee, and maybe they're super stressed out, so they start drinking, and then they start yelling at their kids, and it just kind of snowballs, like you said, unconsciously. At that point, it feels their health has so many symptoms, it feels like a kitten has been playing with yarn. And it's like, how do I get this back to an organized ball, right? It's all, where do I begin? It's just a tangled yarn. And so many people grab at supplement. And I love supplements when they are high quality and they're meant for you. But we just kind of grab at them desperately, hoping for a solution, or grab onto a diet, because the marketing around diets are wonderful. The doctor that wrote Proteinaholic, he said in, like, I think it was chapter 1, and I started crying. It was so beautiful. He goes, these diets, you did not fail these diets. These diets failed you. And then he proceeds to, like, the whole book is him demystifying these diets based on science. He has a really interesting story. He had the hubris, oh, I'm a doctor that cuts your stomach out, and I'm going to help you lose weight by cutting your stomach out and telling you to eat a quote unquote low fat, highly processed 1200 calorie a day diet. But then in his 30s, he began to become sick and fat eating his diet that he puts all his patients on. And so he had to eat humble pie, go back to the drawing board. And that's when he did not like start out going, I want to become vegan. He's like, did not. That was the last thing he wanted to do. But after looking at everything, he's like, oh my gosh, everything I've been saying is wrong. And everything I've been saying is just like cutting out people's stomachs was just a temporary solution. This wasn't the long-term solution. But like, oh, you have a sore throat. Let's cut out your tonsils, right? It's just like, oh, you have a problem with the gallbladder. Let's cut out the gallbladder. Let's just remove body parts. That's the solution. And then that's when the clients end up coming to me. I'm a health coach, and they have all these symptoms. I'm like, okay, so how many body parts have they removed from you? Because so many times someone starts talking about the digestion. I'm like, and when did they remove your gallbladder? And they're like, how did you know? I'm like, well, this is a dime a dozen. How many people have had their gallbladders removed or other body parts removed because, it offended the MD? And I love drug-based medicine for when it can save someone's life, but they suck at chronic disease. They cause more chronic disease. They do not help fix it. They'll help you manage the disease, keep the disease, make other diseases happen. They're great for emergency medicine. That's where they shine. I love them there, but they're the worst. We're taking our cars to plumbers is what we're doing. And we have to stop believing the propaganda that drug-based MD medicine, allopathic medicine, is where we should go when we have multiple symptoms and chronic illness. We need to go to doctors like you who look at ancient wisdom and the latest science, get to the root cause, support the body to come back into balance. It just makes so much sense. I'm really blown away by this idea that as we burn fat, we're processing stored emotions. I always knew that as we burn fat, we're processing toxins, heavy metals, like the things that was stored in the fat. But the idea that then we would be unlocking old patterns, old negative beliefs, old unresolved emotions, which makes sense if you're changing your diet, you're now going to come up against, because you're changing old behaviors. So that's some stuff that comes to the surface there, but then just the process of burning fat is going to bring up stuff to resolve. That's such an interesting way of putting it. You talked about these different detoxes, and I'm really, really interested. If our listeners have identified with what you've talked about and say, yeah, I think my digestion needs some support. I feel like my lymph and my glymph could really use some support. And I'd like to burn those 11 or 17 pounds you said. I'd like to get my metabolism fire going, and I'd really like to address this. If they could pick one cleanse or one protocol on your website, what would it be?
I think that the first one is so simple. It's just the 4-day short home cleanse, which is a free ebook that you can it takes you step by step through the entire process. It gives you some herbs. Like there's one herb we call Gentle Digest, and it's just a combination of 5 spices: ginger, cumin, coriander, fennel, and cardamom. And you can make your own mix of that and spice your food, cook with it. And the studies show that will actually increase the strength of your stomach acid, increase the amount of bile that you produce from your liver and your gallbladder. It'll increase your duodenal and pancreatic enzymes. And if you have that upper digestion coordinated, you won't let undigested proteins and fats go undigested into your intestinal tract, irritate the lining, and find their way through into the lymphatic system where they cause all kinds of havoc. And like you said, the way doctors are taking parts out started by bubble wrapping our diet. So instead of fixing that problem I just mentioned, we just say, oh, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat that, I'm not going to eat that, I'm going to go on a low-fat diet, I'm going to go on a high-fat diet, I'm going to do all these extreme diets trying to dance around, without realizing it, dancing around the underlying problem. And that's the beauty of Ayurveda. They have thousands of years of experience being experts in rebooting and strengthening digestion. You probably know Dr. Bernard Jensen. Years ago, he was a great doctor about gut health. He created the first Kaliman boards, the colonics. He created iridology. He had a health clinic out in Escondido, California. And I was a big fan of, I was a real longevity nut. I got to meet Jack LaLanne. I was a fan of Paul Bragg. I was a fan of Bernard Jensen and way back in the day. And I finally got to lecture with Dr. Bernard Jensen. He was my mentor. He's written over 50 books. I mean, just really brilliant guy. But he was old now, like almost in his late 80s probably. And his belly was really super distended. And his assistant told me that he had to take 17 digestive enzymes with every single meal. And I was like, God, that can't be right, you know? And then when I went to India and I studied Ayurveda, they were so kind and gentle to the intestinal tract. They would never clobber it with really aggressive agents that could irritate the lining. It was all about creating a really nutritive environment for the good bacteria to proliferate. And they weren't about killing the bad and, you know, ripping the guts to shreds with antibiotics or heavy aggressive cleanses or coffee enemas. All of those can work medicinally. But in the long run, you want something that's going to be sustainable. And so it was really an eye-opener for me about how we do it in the West. It's so aggressive. More is better, harder, push harder. Versus in India, they had like thousands of years to figure this out. And they knew that the environment, like you said, it's Goldilocks. It can't be too dry in there, constipated. It can't be too wet in there, mucousy. It's got to be just right for the good bugs to proliferate and for the lining to stay intact. And if that lining breaks down, you know, we're in trouble. And that's what's happened to us. That filter in our intestinal tract, you know, doesn't really get replaced. It just over time can break down. So that's what Ayurveda is really about, is understanding how to reboot that upper digestion, heal the lining. There was a study came out just a couple of weeks ago that showed that when you actually heal the gut, that it actually was the key to longevity. And when they healed the gut, that it actually had a cascade effect of healing every other organ in the body. So the idea that the gut, we all know gut health is really important, but to have science to show that gut health is the kingpin, the organ responsible for our longevity, that's new science. And that's what Ayurveda said thousands of years ago. The seat of your stress in your nervous system is in your gut. It takes a beating, sort of keeps on ticking, but we really have to really care for it with kid gloves and create an environment that's so conducive. That's why the cleanses we do are gentle. It's not like an endurance event. You eat. You're not starving, because if you're starved, the body stores fat. And just like we said, when you're under stress, you store fat. Well, when you're not under stress, you release the fat. Well, when you stored the stress as fat, what is that? That's emotional stress that got stored in your fat. And when you actually force the body to release the fat by creating parasympathetic dominance, taking away the emergency, the body naturally burns its fat and releases those emotional toxins and patterns of behavior that were there because of a stressful situation, recorded because, you know, that stressful event that scared the heck out of you when you were 10, you went into a cave, a bear chased you out. You're never going to forget that. It's a species survival thing. And we hold on to those memories, but they're not, a lot of them don't need to be remembered. We can let them go, you know?
I love it. And earlier you talked about how the study with people eating wheat versus not eating wheat, the people that didn't eat wheat, which we'd all expect them to be healthier because they're gluten free, they had higher levels of mercury. And the first place my mind goes is, oh, gluten free products are higher in mercury, but that's not the point that you were saying.
No.
What you were saying is that people who have a stronger digestion also have stronger lymph, have stronger detox, that the toxins are able to move through and get out, and that they're able to eat some poison. They're able to actually eat, like you eat a little bit of poison to strengthen the body, in a sense, and test the body. But when you have all those aspects in alignment, then if you eat something with mercury, your body's going to get rid of it, which is people who are removing food after food after food, eliminating the gluten, eliminating, the dairy and the eggs, and they just kind of start going down this list of all the things I can't eat. Oh, now I can't eat nightshades, and now I can't eat legumes, and now I'm sensitive to apples and can't eat bananas, and they just keep removing food after food. They'll feel temporarily okay, but the root cause is not being addressed, so that their lymph is still backed up, their digestion is still compromised, their immune system is compromised, their integrity of their detox pathways, the all the ways that we eliminate are weakened. And so then heavy metals, when they get in us through our food, and if someone has amalgams or gets injected, they stay in the body. So it's really interesting. We can't just assume, oh, because this person ate this and this person ate this and here's the outcome. Oh, it means that food's bad and that food's good. Okay, done. I'm going to stop thinking and just, take it at face value. There's so much more to this, and we have to go deeper. And that's what I love this conversation today. You're probably now one of my favorite guests. You're right up there, and I gotta have you back on the show, because this was just scratching the surface of what you know and you teach. And I'm so happy to bring your information to the listener, because we're all desperately seeking, if not for ourselves, for our friends and family. We're all looking for the answers to help us. Now, I know there's not one size fits all, but this, like you said, with Ayurveda, it's looking at the body as a whole and helping the body come back into balance, and supporting the nature that we've observed through thousands of years, and how the body's meant to function. And for those who are religious or spiritual, it just only makes sense to eat the way God intended. Right? It just only makes sense to eat what God has provided. And fasting is, I can't think of a religion where fasting isn't part of it. And so people who aren't tuned into religion or aren't in any spiritual practice, they eat 3 meals a day and some snacks, and they think fasting is ludicrous. One of my friend's partners says, he just goes, I think, he doesn't even say I think, he goes, fasting's unhealthy. And she fasts, and she goes, what makes you say that? He goes, I don't know. I just think it's unhealthy. I don't have any basis. I just think it's unhealthy. His blood sugar's above 400 all the time. And we're really, like, we keep showing him this information, and we feel really bad for him, because his health is deteriorating, and he's so young. But he's got this belief, my MD, if my MD, if fasting was good for me, my MD would have told me, is what he said. And that's, unfortunately, there's a percentage of the population who believes everything their MD tells them is right, and everything, if their MD didn't tell them it, then it's not worth knowing. Right? And MDs aren't trained in this. Again, taking your car to a plumber. Plumbers are great for leaks in your house, may not know how to fix your car, but we have to critically think. And I love that you're showing us how to critically think around our health and how to dig deeper. So listeners can go to learnsurehealth.com/lifespa and use coupon code LTH. Definitely get the 4-day free cleanse there on the website. Out of all your products, we didn't really talk a lot about your products. Is there something that you want to let us know about on your site? Because you've designed so many amazing herbal products. Is there something that stands out that you'd like to let us
Well, I
know
think
about?
there's probably two that would fit into what we talked about today. There's that formula we call Gentle Digest, which is the ginger, cumin, coriander, fennel, and cardamom. Take a couple of those before each meal to reboot your upper digestion. And then there's an herb called Mangista, Manjistha, and that is the Ayurvedic lymphatic herb. It's phenomenally important for helping that extra weight around your belly and making sure whatever you eat, if there's some undigested food, it doesn't end up creating lymphatic congestion, which can cause so many health concerns. Many of the things that most people are experiencing are lymph-based. And we don't really look or think about the lymph. There's nothing really in Western medicine about the lymph. There's no medical pharmaceutical grade drug for the lymph. But in Ayurveda, there's a lot of herbs for the lymph. It's the first thing we treat. So those are the two I would say to start with for folks. And they're very, very safe. There's the whole herb. They have all the natural constituents, all the bugs, natural microbes that are there. They've been used as foods for thousands of years. So it's not like taking some big potent, 1,000 times potent extract that can actually, do good, but also have some consequence. That's the beauty of it. It's really kind and gentle and very safe.
How do we take it? Both of them.
Well, you take the Gentle Digest as a capsule, 1 or 2 capsules before the meal, and the Mangista is also a capsule, and you take probably just one of those after the meal, and you'd be set.
Nice. Very cool. I really want to have you back on the show. I've got like a list of things I want to talk about. Parasites. I want to talk about breathing.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, just so many things. We can geek out on a lot of really cool stuff. So please, please come back on the show, and then go back to your publishers. I want your book relaunched with a better with my title that I came up with it. You don't even have to give me credit. Just do it. Just do it. I want people to read it. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for coming on the show and introducing these concepts to my listeners who in turn are going to share them with their friends and family. My goal has always been to help end suffering. I suffered for so many years. I know you've listened to a few episodes. I don't know if you know my story. I in my 20s was so sick. I suffered so much. I didn't want to I'm not suicidal. I did never wanted to die, but I was like I'd cry. I felt like I was trapped. I was prisoner trapped in my body. And I had chronic adrenal fatigue, type 2 diabetes. I was out of control. I was on constant antibiotics. I had I couldn't even process human language in the morning. It was really bad. I was just exhausted and sick all the time. And I was hungry all the time. And it was just it wasn't me. Like my spirit inside did not match my body. And I had to turn away from MDs because they didn't have anything for me. They said I would always have PCOS, I'd always be infertile, and I always had to be on drugs. And I'd always have diabetes, and just they just told me, I'm sorry, you're stuck. This is your plot in life. It's, oh, your genetics or whatever. Like, and just the lie after lie and the hubris and the poison they gave me, right? It was disgusting. And they act like they have the answers and there are no other answers. And so many people are suffering. So when I found natural medicine, I actually refound it because I went to a naturopath as a child and then I rebelled. So I had to re-find it and use food and herbs and supplements and vitamins, minerals, everything and natural practitioners. But I went from my 20s now then in my 30s getting my body back, and then we have a beautiful son, and I don't think we're done having a family yet, but we lost our daughter 2 years ago. And I gained 40 pounds, and without really, I didn't feel like I ate myself into those 40 pounds, which is really interesting because I ate so clean during pregnancy that within weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks after the birth, I was back down to my pre-birth weight. So it wasn't like I gained weight during the pregnancy. I was really good about my nutrition. And it was after losing her that I put on 40 pounds, and these are 40 grief pounds. I had
Oh
PTSD,
boy.
and just when you said that, it's really interesting because I've pretty much lost it now, but it was a struggle, and I kept coming up against, and like now seeing what you talked about, losing weight can bring out the emotions that were there. And that's so true that I felt like I was really going through some going through some stuff while losing it, but it was a different weight loss than what I've experienced in the past because there was so much, it was charged with emotion, let's just say. So now this really makes sense, and we can be gentle on ourselves and forgive ourselves. I think I can only say for what I feel like as a woman. I don't know what it is to be a man. But for women, I feel that we hold a lot of guilt and shame for not looking like magazine models, like, or maybe we looked amazing in our teenage years and our 20s, and then it kind of like all falls apart after a few kids. Although I do have a friend who's had 5 daughters and she still looks like she's 19. But for most of us, there's something that happens, and maybe it's trauma. Like you said, like there's a lot going on in digestion, pesticides, drugs that kill our good bacteria. But there's a lot of guilt and shame, and how much of the weight that we're carrying is emotional, right? In there. So, thank you for bringing that up, and I wanted to share that with the listeners so that I can give them the grace, and that they can hold mercy in their heart for themselves and let go, hold that grace and love themselves enough to let go of the guilt and the shame so they can take the steps towards health and healing and heal emotionally while they heal physically. And I want listeners to go to your website, learntrail.com/lifespa gets you there, coupon code LTH. Go check out those cool products, get the books, and tune in for next time we have John on the show because I can't wait. I can't wait to have you back. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I'm honored and I would love to come back. And all the things you just mentioned, I feel like there's just so much to talk about there that can help so many women. I'll tell you, one John Hopkins study, 40 to 60% of women during and after their pregnancy have what's called a hiatal hernia, where the stomach pushes up from the baby so hard it herniates through the diaphragm and causes digestive problems and breathing problems and lymphatic problems and cognitive problems for decades. And I wanted to write a book called, I've never been quite the same since my pregnancies. And my publisher thought it was a bad idea. I think I got a new publisher. But,
Yeah.
the idea is like that doesn't have to happen. Those things are reversible. And I treat so many women, decades after that with proper breathing exercises, reboot their digestion, and all those problems go away. So and along with that is the emotional piece where you can shed some of those old unwanted emotions and those patterns of behavior that just kind of haunt us, and they don't have to. That's really, yeah. I can't wait to dive into that with you next time.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. It's a date. Looking forward to
Okay,
it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Can't wait to talk to you again.
great. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Dr. John Douillard. We're definitely going to have him back on the show. He has a whole talk on how to reactivate the diaphragm so that we breathe correctly. And I thought this was really interesting that they did a study and found that 93% of athletes or, gym goers, people that run on the treadmill, that they are not using their diaphragm correctly, that something's blocking them from full activation of their diaphragm. I guess I'm not one of those people because I feel like I breathe really well, but my husband and I were on the treadmill this week at the gym and he turned to me and said, "I don't feel like I'm breathing correctly." And that was really interesting because I'm watching him as he's running, and then he stops the treadmill and he's kind of, winded because he just sprinted, and he's looking at me and he goes, "Yeah, it doesn't feel like I'm breathing correctly." Now we see the chiropractor and we see naturopaths and acupuncturists and all kinds of really cool holistic practitioners. But he just had that realization, like he didn't feel like his diaphragm was fully engaged. And then right after that, I interviewed Dr. Douillard and him and I got to talking about it. And that's what we're definitely gonna have him back on the show to teach us this because it's a real thing. Now, I recently had a client who I've been working with using the phototherapy patches I discussed in a recent episode, having amazing results. And she noticed that her diaphragm came back online. She said that when she would fall asleep, her oxygen levels would drop into the 70s. And she is on monitors. She's on medical monitors throughout the night. And so she knew this, and that after using the phototherapy patches, she felt like it awoke something in her diaphragm. It re-engaged it. She started breathing better. And when she sleeps now, her oxygen levels stay in the 90s. And I thought this was fascinating that we can reactivate. First of all, I never thought that the diaphragm, unless we had some kind of major brain trauma or some kind of major neurological trauma, some kind of major structural trauma, I didn't realize how common it was for people to not be engaging their diaphragm correctly and the auxiliary secondary muscles that help to control the rib cage and the sternum, that this whole upper body thoracic structure could be off, right? Just like someone could be walking, like their gait, they could be walking and some people walk and everything's fine, but then you look at someone and you're like, "Hey, your foot kind of bends inwards," or the way you're walking looks like the rest of your body is kind of off because of the way your gait is. Well, just imagine breathing. And I always thought we all breathe pretty well, and now according to Dr. John, we're not. Most of us aren't doing it correctly, and we can, with some exercises, reactivate and bring online our the full use of our diaphragm. How cool is that? Especially for my husband, who's getting really great numbers in the gym, running more and more and sprinting more and more, and he wants to maximize his experience on the treadmill. So I thought that was really cool. I'm excited to have him back. I don't know if you remember at the very beginning of this episode, that was a long time ago. That was like almost 2 hours ago. at the beginning of this episode, we opened the episode talking about structured water, which it surprised me because he's like, yeah, I got my analemma water right here. And I had my analemma water. So we had a great conversation about it. If you don't have your structured water device yet, what are you waiting for? Go out and get it. It is not that expensive compared to all the other machines out there. It's under $300. It's like I think there's one that's like $170. Plus we have a coupon code. So you use this little device and you stir your water with it. We have an interview I've done about it. We have an interview coming up. I'm interviewing one of the scientists that does the studies, and he's got some really cool things to share. I'm going to be interviewing him next month, so that's exciting. So tune in for that. You can go to learntruehealth.com/structured water. That's learntruehealth.com/structured water. And be sure to use coupon code LTH for the listener discount. Get your savings when you buy your Analemma structured water device. Check it out. And if you like your entire house and all the water in every tap and faucet coming into your home already structured, then you can also check that out there as well, because they have the device that you hook up to your plumbing, and then you can bathe and shower in structured water, which they're releasing the studies, and there's already some studies that you can check out by go to learntruehealth.com/structured water, and the preliminary studies are fascinating. I thought it would have to do more with like skin health, but they're seeing that it actually has to do with heart health, that they're seeing vast improvements to heart health. And how cool is that? Because that affects every cell in the body. They also say that if you want to improve brain health, improve heart health, because the major aspects of brain health have to do with making sure that we're getting the flow of nutrients and oxygen to the brain, removing the junk. It's all about bringing the groceries in the cell, and just like a house, bring the groceries in, take the garbage out. And as long as we do that effectively, then every cell can be healthy. Now, if you'd like to get some of Dr. Douillard's wonderful Ayurvedic herbs, supplements, and also his free guides, he talked about his 4-day free cleanse that he gives, you can go to learntruehealth.com/lifespa. That's learntruehealth.com/lifespa. Make sure you use coupon code LTH. They're giving us a 10% off on orders over $50, which is pretty easy to do. You buy 2 bottles of something and you're over $50, and then you get 10% off. And how cool is that? So, and that's a repeating coupon code, so you can use that every time you go to learntruehealth.com/lifespa, coupon code LTH. And join our Facebook group. I'd love for you to come in, tell me what you thought about this episode, what you learned. I thought this was amazing. I got off the interview, went to my husband, and I said that this might be in the top 20. We've done over 500, so to make the top 20 is pretty big, but the amount of wisdom that Dr. Douillard just landed on us, it was so cool. I just love that you can walk into your kitchen, take, cumin, ginger, turmeric, black pepper, these kind of herbs that are just sitting there in our kitchen, and we can use them to support digestion. And I had just been recently reading some studies, because I'm in the process of writing a blog that I'm going to be publishing about my moon milk that I've been drinking for quite a while. He had mentioned some of the spices. I'm like, oh yeah, those are all the herbs that are in my moon milk. Well, I've been doing the research on ginger, fennel, coriander, cardamom, and cumin. Those were the 5 he talks about that are in his supplements. And I've seen that in their studies, where it's like in the 6-week study where someone took a teaspoon of this herb every day, which you can easily do by sure, you can put it in tea or make a moon milk like me. You can also just throw it in your soup. If you wanted to, you could put it in your smoothie. That'd be an interesting smoothie right there. You could put it in your juice, make you can blend a bunch of juices together and make a virgin Caesar, a little just fun vegetable drink, like a V8 drink. But there's all kinds of ways you can get these herbs into you. And these studies were talking about how in a 6-week study, they found that taking these herbs significantly decreased bloating, decreased gas, increased the ability to perform digestion, and the list goes on and on and on. I was using them. I have about 15 herbs I make in my moon milk, and most of these herbs you can get. They're probably already in your kitchen, which is so great. And then there's just a handful that I go to the store for, like the adaptogens I love to add, like ashwagandha. And these herbs not only aid in digestion, they also help to balance out hormones. They help to get rid of parasites. They help to boost the immune system, decrease inflammation, aid in sleep, and just on and on and on. It's everywhere I looked, it almost seemed like it just helps every single system of the body, and it's so easy and it's almost free. Like just walk into your kitchen. That's you already own most of these spices. Just start using them on a daily basis to gain the benefits. So I just love Dr. Douillard's methods of bringing in that ancient wisdom and now also using the modern science to understand what they've been teaching for 5,000 years and using in these ancient ways. But now we can look at it through the modern lens and go, yep, these studies prove what they've been saying for 5,000 years. And now we understand the processes as to why these things work. It's so great. So yeah, definitely get his free cleanse. Go to learntruehealth.com/lifespa. And if you do decide to buy any of his herbs, which I've checked them out and I really like them, that's coupon code LTH at learntruehealth.com/lifespa. And come join the Facebook group, Learn True Health in Facebook. Would love to see you there. Tune in to next week. We're going to have a 2-part interview, more about herbs. Actually, we're diving in and learning more about herbs, and it's pretty exciting. I love what we learn in the next 2 episodes, so tune in for that. Thank you so much for sharing this podcast with those you care about. If you're a new listener and someone shared this with you, guess what? They care about you. That was like sending you a big virtual hug by giving you this episode, just so you know. So definitely share this with those you care about and tell them, hey, I like you and I thought of you, and this is my little virtual hug sending you this episode. And then tell your friends to come join the Facebook group community, the Learn True Health community, because we love supporting each other in our health success. We're helping as many people as possible to learn true health, and you're a part of that. So thank you.